Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The Ukrainian army has broken through Russian defensive lines in the Zaporizhia region and made advances near Bakhmut. According to experts, the successes opened the way for the development of a counterattack towards the Sea of Azov. The Ukrainians' main goal is to cut off the land route to Crimea to prevent the Russians from supplying troops fighting in the south. Ukrainian forces carried out an extensive operation with mechanized troops in the Zaporizhia region and broke through the first line of Russian defenses near Orikhiv. The main success of the Ukrainian forces is the recapture of the village of Staromayorsky. A few kilometers away, Russian forces' fortifications begin. We have fulfilled the mission entrusted to us and liberated the village of Staromayorsky. From a logistical point of view, this is a very important location, and also what the Ukrainians are doing, which is degrading ammunition depots and logistics. But there was also an attempt to pull back both artillery and Ukrainian assault formations from the Zaporizhia direction. According to U.S. intelligence, the Ukrainian successes can be considered a major strike in the counteroffensive, and the breakthrough of Russian defenses offers promising prospects. It is possible that the Ukrainians will move toward the Sea of Azov in the coming weeks. Ukrainian troops have reached the Zaporizhia front. They have reached the fortifications, the so-called Dragon's Teeth, that is the most important defense against tanks and armored vehicles. And now, in fact, there may be a simpler way to capture Melitopol, which in the future provides opportunities to cut the land corridor from Russia to Crimea. In addition, Kiev is eagerly awaiting the delivery of 31 American Abrams tanks, which are expected to arrive at the front in just a few weeks. According to experts, the machines will be a significant reinforcement. Russian troops have mined the front lines of their positions to slow the march of the Ukrainians. Densely placed mines are a major threat to our infantry and mechanized troops. In 4 hours, one person can go 7 meters. We move like in tar, so we are an easy target for artillery and aviation. What we are dealing with at the moment are some tactical strikes. That is because in order for an offensive to take place, we must have several conditions fulfilled, such as stabilizing this front, having a quantitative advantage on the side of one of the opponents. Here, these forces, I would rather say that they operate on the principles of positional warfare. Meanwhile, Russian propaganda media are reporting that Wagner's group is pressuring the government in Minsk to allow them to enter NATO countries, Poland and Lithuania. It is estimated that about 3,500 Russian mercenaries may now be in Belarus. On the Polish-Belarusian border, our patrols are there at all times. We monitor 24 hours a day. We respond immediately. We have monitoring. There is a barrier, therefore if anything should concern us, immediate action will be taken. Such a diversion would possibly change the position of NATO, which would have to focus precisely on this space of potential diversion from the Russian side. It is necessary to take into account such a possibility of the course of the upcoming events. Russia will do everything to block the Ukrainian offensive. Polish services are constantly monitoring the situation on our eastern border. Already at the beginning of July, by the decision of the Ministry of Defense, the Polish-Belarusian border was reinforced by another 1,000 soldiers and 200 units of equipment from the 12th Mechanized Brigade. Today, the Polish Sejm rejected the Senate's objection to a presidential amendment to the law on a commission to investigate Russia's influence on Poland's security. The bill will now go to the president. According to the presidential amendment, members of the commission will not be allowed to include parliamentarians. This is the change proposed by the president, and I have also said all along that the commission should be composed of experts, as the matter is extremely difficult and complicated. The amendment also lifts the ban on performing functions related to the disposal of public funds for up to 10 years. Although the amendment under review eliminates several solutions from the law that have raised constitutional concerns from the outset, it still fails to correct many of the commission law's fundamental flaws and fails to correct its numerous provisions that even demonstrably conflict with the Constitution. Senators did not approve the bill, despite the fact that the changes proposed by President Andrzej Duda were in response to some of the objections from the opposition. We expected such a decision from the Senate. The Senate could have done it much earlier, but the Senate dragged it out to the maximum. The discussion about the bill has been going on for many months. Among the candidates for the head of the commission is the name of Professor Sławomir Cęckiewicz. Mr. Professor would undoubtedly be useful there, but those decisions are before us. On Thursday, the Venice Commission issued its opinion on the law on the establishment of a commission to investigate Russian influence in Poland. The commission is calling on the Polish authorities to repeal the law, as even presidential amendments cannot fix the flaws in the original. It is difficult to take the Venice Commission report seriously. The commission alleges, for example, that this was not a governmental procedure, but a parliamentary one, which is shorter in terms of legislative procedure. In this way, it contradicts itself, because at the same time, if it was supposed to be a governmental procedure, one then possibly make the accusation that this is some kind of interference by the government of political processes. Meanwhile, it is simply a parliamentary initiative. The commission's main task will be to investigate Russian influence on the activities of public officials and senior executives at state-owned companies. The consequences of this policy were tragic for Poland. As a result of this policy, Donald Tusk became head of the European Council, benefited personally, but subordinated such personal politics, Poland's politics, while he was in power. So these matters should be explained and investigated in the Polish parliament. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki indicated that the actions of Donald Tusk's government led to the liquidation of many military units in Poland and put our country at risk. Liquidation of a unit in the Warmian-Mazurian region? And do you know who this province borders with? You have an opportunity to apologize. However, the Civic Platform leader has not apologized. Prime Minister Morawiecki decided as if to use this excuse to lie, as he often does about Ostruda, about whose decision led to the termination of certain structures important to Ostruda. I'm talking about the training center, which is exactly what Jarosław Kaczyński fervently voted for back in 2001. It was even mentioned that this is allegedly some kind of 2001 decision to defend Donald Tusk and his reset policy with Russia. So here I have proof, and Prime Minister Morawiecki also published this proof yesterday, that it was Donald Tusk's government that abolished the military unit in Ostruda. This is the decision of the Minister of National Defense, issued under the authority of the Minister of National Defense on December 24, 2010. The reset policy with Russia was carried out from 2007 to 2014. During her U.S. visit, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni met with President Joe Biden and other U.S. top officials, including U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Meloni spoke about the possibility of boosting trade between the two countries as they met at the White House yesterday. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni discussed topics including the war in Ukraine and food security with top U.S. lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Meloni met with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
When we last met, I was in Rome just a couple months ago with a bipartisan group, and it's an honor to actually host her here. But as explained to the Prime Minister, when we departed, the Republicans and Democrats alike turned to one another and said, she is probably one of the most impressive leaders we have found on our trip. We've watched that you were looking forward, not backwards. How to bring Europe together, show leadership in Ukraine, but at the same time, the strategy to build for the future.
In her remarks alongside McCarthy, she said the Western world was united, and it was important that the world follow international law, or a world of chaos would occur.
And I say it, for it is another sign of the incredibly strong ties between Italy and the United States. Ties that have become even deeper in recent times after the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. More than ever in this international juncture, our relations are essentials. More than ever, we must be able to rely one on the other. Today, we had the occasion to exchange views on many international issues, from the war in Ukraine and its effects worldwide, in particular regarding food security, to the stabilization and development in the Mediterranean area, moreover in Africa, the Indo-Pacific, and Italy's next presidency of the G7. I was glad to have this debate with representatives of Congress, because it gives me a complete picture of the foreign policy landscape from representatives elected by the American people.
Giorgia Meloni also met with U.S. President Joe Biden yesterday afternoon. Biden said he saw no reason why trade couldn't increase, while Meloni said she agreed about the possibility of boosting trade with the United States.
Today we're going to talk about our deepening economic connections, which fueled more than $100 billion in trade last year. In my view, there's no reason why that can't increase. And we're also expanding in partnership in new areas, including space cooperation and strengthening our support for developing countries.
And then Italy and the United States have important common interests in enhancing as well a global trade that is not only free but also fair. Competition from other nations that do not meet our standards in terms of worker protection, safety, environmental protection, undermine our companies and workers. So free trade without rules has shown its limits. We must find the right balance between openness and the protection of our economies and strategic interests.
Italy's first woman prime minister came to power last October and is seeking an assertive role abroad as she plans the country's upcoming Italian presidency of the Group of 7 Nations in 2024. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful weekend.